Is Arcane the greatest show or movie based off a video game to date? Today we're going to talk about that.
I have to try and find my sister. Powder? Pie?
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today we're going to be talking about Arcane, which is a new animated show that recently just completed its first season on Netflix. Arcane is based off the League of Legends game, and this season kind of serves as a origin story for some of the game's characters. It's set in the city of Piltover and its undercity of Zaun, and it focuses on the citizens of Zaun who have to live in harsh conditions and constantly have to worry about the threat of Piltover's enforcers at all times. In Piltover, we meet Jayce and Victor, two scientists who are trying to control magic with technology, but some in the community think that this is moving along too soon and it's far too dangerous for them to control. In the streets of Zaun, we're introduced to these two sisters, Vi and Powder, who after blowing a heist, get involved with a war between two different gangs that ends up having huge repercussions for the rest of Piltover and Zaun. So guys, I'm going to start this thing off and just let you know that I absolutely fucking love this show. One of the biggest compliments that I think that I can give the show is that for myself, I'd heard of League of Legends, I had heard the name, but I had absolutely never played the game, don't know anything really about it, so I was going into this thing completely blind, and I kind of went into it because I had heard a lot of, hype about this show is amazing, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance, and I am so glad that I did, and I hope that more people here in the US give it a chance as well, because I think this is definitely one of the best shows, for this year for me. But if not, one of my favorite animated shows of all time. Granted, we only have one season, but this season is amazing, and I'm going to tell you guys why. So despite, having a couple main storylines, a number of different side plots, a bunch of different characters to introduce, and just a lot of history and lore with the League of Legends game, they make it digestible enough where you can, like I said, you can go into this not knowing anything regarding the game or anything like that, and you can go into the show and completely, understand what's going on with all these different characters and things going on in the show. And one of the things that I have to talk about first is just the animation in the show. Oh my god, it is absolutely gorgeous. Everything almost just looks like it could be a painting. It just blew my mind how gorgeous this show, looks overall. Just the whole thing, the backgrounds, the little details like that. But there's certain scenes throughout the show that just come to mind. One of them in particular, there's a fight that comes, kind of in the middle, getting towards the end of the show, between these two characters where they use 3D animation, which, they use for most of the show, but there's also some 2D animation thrown in there. And just the way that they combine those two things, I kid you not, guys, I have lost count how many times that I've gone back and watched that particular fight scene, because the first time that I saw it, my jaw was just, was dropped. I was like, holy fucking shit, this is beautiful. So I've gone back, whether it's, between Netflix or just watching that particular scene on YouTube. I've watched it a number of times, and if you guys have seen the show, you probably know which one that I'm talking about. But yeah, it's just the animation itself. If anything else, just watch this show for that, because I think you guys, if artists and stuff like that, you're really going to appreciate it. And there's also a character named Jinx, which I'll talk about a little bit more in, a few minutes here. But just a lot of what they did with her character, the animation and stuff like that, was really, really, really cool. So again, I'll talk about more in here and about her in just a few minutes. And what makes a good show oftentimes, guys, is just, well-written characters, because, if you care about the characters, you're involved in the, the different storylines and stuff like that. And if you don't, then you just don't really care about anything else that's happening in the show. So I can tell you guys that the characters in Arcane are so incredibly well written. There's oftentimes you'll get introduced to a character and you have, certain expectations for them. And then, later on in the show or that same episode, those expectations will get subverted and you're just wait a second, what's going on here? And a lot of these characters, they definitely have gray moments too. So not everything's, just black and white with these characters where it's oh, this person's, a good guy, this person's a bad guy, even though they kind of seem that way at first. There's definitely a lot of gray area here, which I really appreciate, because it makes these characters so much more interesting. So as far as the characters go, great writing on that aspect. And speaking of characters, like I I just mentioned, I wanted to talk about Jinx. She's definitely my favorite character in the show. I know she's definitely a fan favorite between, the show, but also from what I've read and stuff, for like the game as well. So I can see why they decided to cover her character in this first season, because she's so fascinating. And I think that Ella Piernell, she did a great job. I hope I'm actually pronouncing that right, but she did a great job just as far as, bringing this character to life. The voice acting is amazing. She's able to make Jinx both vulnerable at times, and then there's other times where I was actually kind of terrified of this character, because some of the stuff that she does is pretty crazy. I can see a lot of people I've seen made comparisons to like Harley Quinn, so I can definitely see like the comparisons like with that. I'm sure they definitely got some like inspiration from that character, but yeah, I mean, at least from like what I've seen like in the show, I think that this character might be more interesting to me than like Harley Quinn is. But yeah, she definitely has a lot going on throughout this first season, and every time that she was on the screen, she definitely stole like the different like scenes like for me. So Jinx is my favorite character from the first season for sure. I also love Vi, who is voiced by Haley Steinfeld, which I didn't, know right away. So I mean, again, great, voice acting, from her. This character, she's just such a fucking badass in the show. And I think, just like the relationship, the dynamic between her and Powder, it's definitely one of the driving forces of the show. And she has a pretty, like nice arc from when the show, the very first episode to the end of like season 1. So I'm definitely excited to see like where they take like her character, going forward. But yeah, I mean, that's like one of the main focuses is like the relationship between Vi and Powder, and kind of like where they start off and where they're kind of left at the end of season 1. So it's definitely one of my favorite aspects of this, season 1 for sure. I also love the parallels that this show has as far as like a family dynamic between like different characters. So they're not all necessarily, like brother, sister, things like that. But even if they're not necessarily related by blood, they have that, that kind of like relationship. So you have, obviously, Vi and Powder, they are, legit like sisters. So just like their relationship. And then you have Jayce and Victor, which this is an example of, two characters who they aren't actually brothers, but the way that they, interact with each other, they're the two scientists who they're trying to harness the magic with, like technology, and, just the way that they kind of act for most of the show, you have that, brotherly like relationship. And then you also have Silco and Vander. So again, not actually brothers, but they have that kind of that like brotherly like relationship in a different way. And you'll see kind of like what I'm talking about as you watch the show. But I love, the parallels between those, different things, between those, these groups of people on all different sides of, what's kind of going on in this show. And some of the other characters too. I mean, this show is filled with, with really, really good characters. Some of the ones that, I haven't mentioned yet are just, Mel. She is an example of where I kind of thought this character was going to go one way when the show first started, and ends up going in a completely different direction that I did not see. So Mel's character, Echo, is really, really cool. Can't wait to see what's going to happen with that character. Again, Jayce, Victor, just a lot of great characters in the show that I think that, you're probably going to get attached to at least one, if not multiple, by the end of the first season. And we have to also talk about the soundtrack for the show, because holy shit, guys, like, talk about I've been listening to this thing. I have it on, been listening to it like in my car and stuff like that, nonstop basically since, like the shows like come out. Every time there would be a new episode, there would be like a couple songs in there where I'm like, I have to go and find this song like right away. So they did a great job as far as composing like the soundtrack, and they just fit the scene so perfectly. Going back to that one scene that I talked about, earlier, where the two characters fighting with the 3D animation and the 2D animation mixing, there's a song there that are just like, whoa. And there's several other ones when we first kind of go down into Zon, like for the first time. Going down like through an elevator with these characters, the song that plays there, absolutely love that. So yeah, I think that this music, it just got me really, really pumped. So I mean, and I would go back and again watch these scenes like multiple times just to hear the song again when it first, you know, played like on the show. That's how much I like the music.
Welcome to the playground. Follow me. Tell me your nightmares and fantasies.
And to tie into that, the show, it has some incredible, you know, just like fight sequences. You know, I kind of just talked about like the one there with those couple characters, but there's several other ones, you know, throughout the show as well. So there's a lot of great action, you know, throughout the first season of Arcane. But at the same time, even though there's a lot of action and things kind of do move at a fairly, you know, quick pace once they get going, at the same time, you can have an action scene, and then in like that very next moment, there could be a heartbreaking moment like right there. So there's definitely a lot of heart and emotion in the show. So I'm not kidding you guys when I say that, you know, season 1 was definitely an emotional roller coaster. So overall, guys, yeah, like I said, you know, if you couldn't tell by now, I absolutely fucking love the show. I couldn't believe how invested I got into these characters, into just the history and the lore of, you know, of this story. And we're only in season 1, and I feel like, you know, from what I'm hearing from other people who have, you know, played the game and stuff like that, granted, I guess it sounds like there's not as much, you know, story arcs and stuff like that in the game goes, but just from the different characters, because there's like 150 or some crazy number like that. So I feel like they definitely have a lot that they can still, you know, explore. So I'm really excited that we've already got a season 2 announced. Granted, it's probably going to take a little while, but hey, if they can deliver anything even remotely close to what season 1 was, let them take their time, because man, this first season, it's one of my favorite animated shows, you know, at least like this first season. It's hard to compare, you know, obviously to like a show that's had like a full run, but at least this first season, it's definitely one of the best first seasons of any show that I've seen of all time for me personally. So if you guys have not seen Arcane, I highly recommend you guys, you know, check it out. Even for people, like I said, you know, for me, I wasn't someone who played like the game or anything like that. Even if you're not, you know, like a hardcore gamer or anything like that, I just recommend checking it out for the animation itself. The art is absolutely incredible. You know, the storylines with the different characters, they did a great job at the writing, and just, you know, the voice acting too. But it's filled with action, with, you know, with heartbreak and all kinds of stuff. So I think, you know, you will find something that I think that you will appreciate about the show. So as far as the score goes, guys, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. One of my favorites of the year by far. So I hope you guys check out Arcane. If you have seen the show, I definitely want to hear what your thoughts are, you know, overall. So let me know down below in the comments if you have seen the show. What are some of your favorite aspects? If you do put any spoilers, just, you know, give a heads up to people and just maybe put like, you know, spoilers and then a couple spaces so that way people don't see it right away. So yeah, if you do that, and then if you haven't seen the show, is it something that you're going to check out? Definitely let me know as well. So overall, and again, guys, you know, if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.